Something completely different. Okay, yeah, something completely different. I would like to discuss research that we just started about the potential effects of urbanization on ecology and water quality. There haven't been a lot of research on that. There are a lot of partners in here. I don't have a lot of time, so I wanted to discuss everything on this. I will shortly present the research questions that we have on this subject. The effects on water quality, that's the first inventarization that we made, and some first measurements that we did in an innovative way. So, well, it's a short talk, but I would like to show you some info that you could use as an international knowledge exchange with a tool we are currently making. So first, what is the research question? So basically, in the Netherlands and around the world, we don't have a lot of knowledge on the effects of floating cities, as we've been talking in the last speeches, on the water quality. So that might be, even in the Netherlands, if you want to build something, you might have to prove that you are not making it worse, or that you have an effect on the water quality. So you have to prove that, basically. So the research question that we are researching is what are those effects, and are there negative, are there positive effects? So what can we see on the impacts of floating urban development on the water quality and ecology? So the research method that we are using is first we're going to look in literature. We're going to make an inventarization on floating structures in the Netherlands and around the world. We're going to visit those structures, and we're going to do some measurements on this. We have done some surveys of inhabitants on the structures, for example, and actors on these systems. We have been doing workshops with builders, but inhabitants and different actors on this field, and some first measurements, as I mentioned before, in some Dutch case studies, which I will show you later. The output would be a scientific report on the effects on water quality, and we're going to make a tool which provides a lot of knowledge, what we found in this research for international knowledge exchange. So, literature, very short. There have been some measurements on complexes. We can see some pictures underneath on Tokyo and on New York in this case. There have been some measurements, but not really on the effect or the difference between the water quality beneath the structure and under the structure. And of course, that's quite hard as well to measure. For example, this is one of the locations in Groningen. As you can see, there's a freeboard of some centimeters, which makes it very hard to conduct any measurements or put divers under there, so it would be risky, for example. Some of the monitoring show, well, not effects, they're grab samples as well. And if you know something about water quality, it's a very dynamic day and night, for example, but on locations as well. So that makes it very complex to do very good measurements on this. So not a lot of literature is found, so more research needed. That's basically why we conducted this research. So, well, I told you about inventarization. This is a website, the Climate Scan it's called. There are a lot of mitigation, adaptation measures on here from the Netherlands. And when we filter out, we have these research locations on floating homes, which you can see here. In the Netherlands, there are about 30 locations with floating structures, houses, but other structures as well, which I will show you. And on this website, you can click on the locations, and it will provide you a lot of information on the structure itself and on the knowledge, articles and papers being written, and some videos, which I will show you later on as well. This is a Dutch site. If you zoom out, there are actually some information on Manila, for example, from the Philippines, some workshop that we done 2 years ago. So it's really meant as a knowledge exchange tool. So, well, some of these examples, floating houses, probably you've seen some here. There's some in Groningen, and Lelystad and Delft that we've done some research on. But besides houses, there is a floating greenhouse, for example, in Naaldwijk, built in 2005. There's some other structures like, living boats, quite huge in the Netherlands. Groningen is one of the cities that has a lot of living boats, as Amsterdam and Utrecht, for example. who are in this study as well. As you can see here, this is Noorderhaven. As you can see, if there should be an effect of floating structures on the water, this is about, well, in some sections, there's even like 2/3 of the surface being covered by floating houses. In this case, not even connected to the sewer, so you could expect some water quality effects on this. So it's quite an interesting location that we did research as well. A floating Chinese restaurant in Rotterdam, for example, you might have seen it. You might think that Rotterdam has it all. It has this conference, it has a floating Chinese, it has the floating pavilion. But in Amsterdam there's a floating Chinese restaurant as well, and it was first. It might reveal where I come from, so to promote Amsterdam a bit as well. So that's one of the structures as well. Anyway, water quality measurements. Not a lot of literature, so we should do more measurements on this. But as mentioned before, it's quite hard to get under structures in this case, and it's very dangerous for divers to go under there and take measurements, for example. So we did to do some of innovation. And one of the innovation that we put in this project is using drones, which is much safer, and we can locate it under the structures, and well, it's more fun. As you can see, my son here, 8 years old, he loves this idea on the drone, so and it doesn't make it scientific. If you want to make it scientific, you should place a lot of sensors on this. So that's what we did actually, a lot of water quality sensors. You see the drone getting in the water here. It's about 9 keys on weight. And what it does basically is nitrate, ammonium, with some sensor, oxygen is one of the most important things that we have to, to rate the water quality, so to say. Temperature, of course, under the structure, and beneath. Pressure, that basically means how deep is the drone under the structure in this case, and conductivity as a parameter of water quality. And one of the things that we put there as well is a diving light, because it's quite dark underneath, and there's a camera on it as well, which you can well, see a lot of eco life if there is any. So I can have a lot of talk on this, but I just show you a video. This on the drone and on some of the locations that we have been working on. So this is the drone and some of the sensors that we put on it. This is conductivity on this place, pressure and temperature, ammonium and nitrate, and oxygen, of course, which is mainly the biggest parameter to use this. So, one impression on the locations. Not really stable, but it's an artist impression. A Danish dogma, if you will, from Trier. So these are some of the structures, and especially of interest is, of course, the bigger structures in this case, because we could expect a bigger impact on the water quality. This is Groningen, for example. It was on the news last weekend in this case. Also video images. As I said, there's a GoPro camera on that, which shows well, the life or what the state is after a couple of years of implementation. A green guy and a red guy, blue and black. And the drone goes into the water, and basically what we do is we sink it down to the level of the floating house, and we try to get it underneath. What you can see here is some of the values running with the experiments. What you can see here is kind of eco-life muscles, if you will. So you see some fish as well. So it's quite interesting to get under the structures and see all these this life. We should really make a documentary on this. Fun. So this is in Lelystad. Looks like an aquarium. This is on the outside, and this is underneath. And what we saw in other places as well, like Amsterdam, we saw a lot of fish, basically on a lot of and sponges and some eco life on there as well. So here's an impression. This was basically the hard point in Groningen, which I told before, only like 20 or 30 centimeters. You see some fish going under there as well. So and a lot of partners. Okay. So, back to some of the results, because of course the pictures are nice, but we need graphs, we need to prove what the difference is. This is the floating pavilion, you've already seen, we saw some footage on this as well. Some graphs, I'm not going to go in detail, but basically what it does is that we go from the surface, so beneath the floating structure, we go underneath and we see how the values differ. Basically, it's quite hard because you see a lot of values, but of course, if you know something about oxygen levels in the water, it decreases by depth. So you should really compare points on the same depth on the same oxygen level, for example, or ammonia. So basically what it says, there's not a lot of difference between it on this structure. And we can go with the drone a couple of meters under the structure, but that's basically what it allows us to see in this case. So there's a poster hanging on the wall, so if you want to get in detail on this, we could explain some more. The one I saw there, that's just with the drone, so it's very short, it's just momentum, so to say. What we did as well is put sensors on there for a couple of days. And of course you have day and night variations, so you should see some difference. In this case, the oxygen level in Amsterdam, so what you do, you place some of the sensors underneath the floating homes in this case, and on some reference points. What you can see here is basically no difference at all, variation, no effects. But it's not on every location, of course. So this is in Utrecht. Again, static measurements for 3 days. For long term, what you can see is some of that, some difference here, but not largely. As you can see, the scale is just 1 milligram per liter in this case, and that follows it basically. In most of the locations, especially in Utrecht, if you go to climate scan, you see that the video, you see a lot of movement of water underneath the structure. So it would be mostly logical that the water quality moves as well as ecology. So, and here, the last example, Naaldwijk, which you can see is more variation in this case. But basically, if we look at the average, it will be considered, well, no significant effects would be the scientific term, so to say. And here are the sensors that we have been using. So, the first results, as to say, well, to conclude from this research, and we're going to go on, of course. These are some of the data we have been presenting, and we're going to go on and make this into a scientific report on all locations, which we need for a representative view on this. But what we see now, well, small-scale floating projects like the houses have not a lot of effect, significant influence on the water quality. Of course, the next step will be going to bigger structures and see if we have some implications or impact on that. Two, I think quite interesting from this research is already footage that we have of the live captured on the video camera, which is of course a very good indicator on quality. And showing this to a lot of builders and water authorities already evidence proof that there is not a lot going on basically on small structures, so to say. Of course, we would like to transfer this knowledge on the online tool, as I said, the climate scan, and well, to get stakeholders and potential environmental impact on the floating developments and get that message across. So that's basically my talk. Thank you for your attention.
So there's room for 1 or 2 questions about the drones, the water quality. Yes?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the water quality beneath floating entity depends upon the material. So if it is timber or some kind of steel, that may invite some kind of algae and fish. While plastic may be very different. So do you have any comparison of materials, the difference?
Yes, basically, well, very good question. Of course, there's a lot of indicators or parameters that influence the water quality, and one of them is material. What we do is with fact sheets on the inventarization is to go by which material is it, when was it built, of course, the building time or being in use is a very important one. As other things, as the water. Is it salt water, is it fresh water, is it a big water, how much is the surface? So, of course, now we have only some of the projects and results, but we're going to relate it to a lot of impact parameters, so to say, and material is, of course, one of them. Yeah. And, of course, the water system as well. As I mentioned, some of the houses might have an interaction on temperature, using temperature in cooling in the house, for example. Of course, temperature is an indicator for oxygen. So basically, in a lot of houses, there's a lot going on, material and other things. So we would like to take that in consideration.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Floris, for the presentation.